Hi, welcome to Triangle Spotlight. I'm Suzanne Lynn, and with me today, I'm very excited. Debra Chen is a podcaster. And hold on, don't be intimidated by the word podcasting. I know, you hear about this all the time. You're like, oh, that's newfangled stuff. But look, we're going to explain to you what this is and how you can listen and why you're going to want to listen. And I'm going to start out by saying that we're talking to Debra about a podcast that she started. It's called The Great Fail. And it's about scandals and how businesses have failed, and Toys R Us and other great companies that have had a huge impact on consumers and investors and stockholders. Oh my, welcome, Debra. How are you?
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm doing great under these circumstances. Thank you for having me on the show. It's great to chat with you.
Absolutely. Now, I see that you come from a background of Wall Street,
Yep.
and it made me wonder if that's at all tied in with how you came up with the concept of the great fail of businesses, going under, failing, making mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess I'll talk about the podcast first. I've always been fascinated with the medium and I've been listening to it for years. And then when Toys R Us declared bankruptcy back in 2017, I thought, I want to know what really happened behind the scenes. So since 2017, it took probably 2 years to launch, but it was just an idea in the making, a lot of brainstorming and getting the right team together. But what the show is, The Great Fail, is an exploratory journey into understanding why great companies have failed. So, we've touched upon a bunch of stories that I encourage you guys to tune in and listen to. But the bigger picture is that we are looking at the death of great companies. And so my background is in Wall Street. I started my career on the trading floors of Lehman Brothers and JP Morgan. And then from there, I ran two publicly traded companies. Um, and then the last 16 years of my career, I've been advising CEOs on their capital market strategy. So from there and seeing sorry. So from there, advising hundreds of companies, I've had an opportunity to see some of them rise and then unfortunately some of them fall. And being privy to a lot of the things that were happening behind the scenes, I thought these would make for amazing lessons. And
Hmm.
so, as a natural storyteller and somebody who's always trying to find meaning and lessons behind that, I decided to launch The Great Fail.
So, what are some of the businesses that you've highlighted and that you've got coming up?
Sure. So we launched the show with two companies, two stories, one of them being LA Gear and then one of them being Google Glass. So I don't know if you remember back in 2014, 2015, Google Glass came out with this huge product that was super hyped. It was called the Glass.
Okay, I don't remember this.
They were futuristic glasses that all the celebrities were. I guess you'd have to be somebody in order to get the first pair,
Okay.
and you don't just get access to it; you get the opportunity to buy them for $1,500, which is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So they were running contests, and the people that won, they're called Glass Explorers. They get a chance to actually purchase the glasses, and this was supposed to be revolutionary and change. So I guess completely changed the way that we would see things through these lenses. So it was basically like a smartphone, except
Okay.
they're smart glasses.
So, for example, if you're taking a walk, you have access to GPS visually through the glasses. You're
Exactly.
accessing internet information visually.
Correct.
Okay.
And you can FaceTime with it. You can record things. And so Google's big unveiling was a bunch of skydivers that leap out of the sky and you get to see their point of view and everything that they're experiencing. So it was a really neat product. But because they were such an elite tool and they were being so exclusive, in the end, it just kind of rubbed everyone the wrong way. And it was also a series of just poor business decisions.
Hmm.
So these are kind of the stories these are the two stories that I started with. And LA Gear was very popular back in the 80s. They were third in sales behind Nike and Reebok, which was huge.
Yeah.
And then kind of the series of missteps that the company took that led them to completely, vanish by the 90s.
Have you seen a common theme of why businesses fail? Is it greed? Is it lack of leadership? Is it
That's a great
poor
question.
production?
That's a great question. And so what we do in our series and our lineup is to find stories that have different themes, to
Oh,
really do our thorough research and understand, what we think were the series of missteps that led to their failure, and then kind of line them up so there's a there's much more diverse than there are patterns.
hmm.
But I have to say that a lot of the ones that we cover right now with Silicon Valley companies and Silicon Valley startups are due to extremely overhyped companies that might not really be answering a question or a need for
Mm,
people or their consumers, and I think that's really fascinating.
it is. I
Yeah,
mean, look, we have all the stories that we need about the successes and the growth and everything. We're kidding ourselves if we don't admit that we're interested in the failure and what happened. And it's a I mean, although we're not huge corporations, we can still apply these principles in a very personal way of, oh, okay, well, A and B equals C falling apart, you know?
exactly. Yeah, and then I also, because of the podcast, I go on Reddit and I run a poll with some of the people on these entrepreneur sites. And, through that and also through some fan mail, I've curated some startup company stories. And it's really interesting to see how, um, you know, just the average entrepreneur and average consumer, they have lessons of their own that they want to share with other people. Um, One of the guys that I featured on one of our fan episodes, he was talking about how he was advising somebody who wanted to bring grasshopper protein. So it was like actually grinded up grasshopper powder into the United States because it was so popular in Mexico, and he just naturally thought that there was a huge market here. And at the end of the lesson, it was that you really need to do market research. And even just being in the public arena and seeing a lot of companies there are some companies you'd be surprised that don't really do thorough research before they decide to go public or
Hmm.
um, even launch their company.
The way I'm trying to tie this into just the everyday person is that we can be self-focused and very set in our ways and think that what we like is what everybody else likes. And instead of being other focused and saying, what is the need? What do you think? Actually listening for the first time instead of saying, I've got this product, I've got to shove it down your throat. Well, no, how about pull me in through a relationship and see if it's something that I want and need and have reaction to. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think passion and ambition are wonderful things. If you have an extreme of those qualities, sometimes they can blindside you from what the actual reality is.
That's what I was going to say, is that you've got a blind spot, and it's a big blind spot, and it's what's made a lot of these businesses, deteriorate. A lot of our listeners and viewers are a little bit older. We're broadcasting right now, WQBQ AM 1410, and you may remember not sitting around the radio, but having a little bit more family time around media
Yeah.
and storytelling and everything. And the degree of production, Debra, that you do in your podcast shows reminds me a lot of going back to the old days of sitting around the radio, because you've got the footsteps, you've got the sound of the rain. And as a matter of fact, if you don't mind, I would love to take this moment to play a little bit of a clip so that people can hear your show. So this is a sample of The Great Fail, and this give us a little background on the concept of this show.
So, there are a lot of great business podcasts out there. What I wanted to create was something very unique for my listeners. And, the thing with podcasts, and as you put it, Suzanne, Some people get a little, I guess, uh, it's
Intimidated. Yeah.
intimidated by the thought of a podcast.
Mhm.
But what it is, I think back in the day, people sat around and listened to radio stories told through through radio. And so what I wanted to do was create kind of a genre bending approach to storytelling. What I've seen are people taking a comedic approach to true crime. I've seen, women drink a glass of wine while they're talking about who murdered who. I've also seen, history being retold in a thrilling way. So what I wanted to do was retell business case studies as a whodunit, because at the end of the day, we are looking at the death of great companies. And so that's really the premise of the show, of The Great Fail.
All right, well, we're going to take just a break right now, and we're going to insert some of that audio. So enjoy this. This is the one about COVID-19. So hang on just a second. And then whatever clip, if you want to send me just a little portion, I'd love to just go ahead and put that in.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, whatever part you think is, really a dynamic.
Yep. I have 30-second clips that I can send over.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Welcome back. I hope that you loved what you heard, and it entices you to just take a little taste and not be intimidated and go, okay, you know what? It's just another medium. And Deborah, the thing that I really love is it's very easy to listen to. You don't have to worry about listening on a podcast channel. You don't have to download iTunes or Google Play or Stitch. You can. And that's certainly a popular way people listen. But if you want to just go to Deborah's website, or you want to just Google The Great Fail, the page will just pop up. I just did it. And then there's all the series, and you just click the button, the arrow, and you'll be able to hear the shows. And I'm telling you, once you hear one and you hear the production and the theater of the mind that Deborah puts into the production that you're doing, it's beautiful. And I really see families sitting around enjoying that again.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. I try to make it very entertaining. I try to make it a fun way to digest a business story. I have been told by people, that they sit together and they binge listen to it as a family, which I never really, I didn't seek out that, but it gives me kind of, it gives me a great sense of pride that people can sit around with their families and listen to these stories that I tell. So I try not to make it too scandalous.
Right. Because all ages are listening and all ears. Yeah. But the fact is that we are moving into podcasting as a major way of consuming audio. And the truth is, for as much as maybe us older people enjoy FM, AM radio and the towers and everything, it's not going to be too long probably before the majority is on demand, meaning that you can listen when you're ready. You don't have to, like the old days, Saturday night, you couldn't go out because Love Boat was on, 9 o'clock, and then Fantasy Island. Everything is upside down now, where you watch and you listen on demand. And that's really the beauty, is when the kids go to sleep, it doesn't matter what time it actually aired. It's at your fingertips.
Yep. I agree with that. I have attended a lot of podcast events, and I don't want to talk too much about the industry, but I think it's a really great time for people to start tuning into podcasts now, before the major networks take over and they start really controlling what is being put out there through their own agendas and what the advertisers want to go after. One thing that I've seen occur right now, it's a low barrier to entry. Anybody can create a podcast. Not everybody can create a great podcast, but people want to hear different voices. And if you're new to it, you will definitely find something of interest to you. Especially now with the genre bending approaches of storytelling, you can listen to true crime, and it's so captivating. People don't like to use the word intimate, but it is a very intimate way of getting the information, and you feel like one person is speaking to you. And I think it's fantastic. This is how now I get my news, and how I get my entertainment. And I encourage everybody to go out and just, pick your favorite genre and just check it out. there's some great stuff out there.
Well, and the niche that you found with this, no one's doing anything like this. And I think watching and learning about why businesses fail, it's just fascinating. I mean, there's really not even that I've found a podcast close to this.
Thank you. Yeah, when I first told my husband that I wanted to do this, I don't think that he really quite understood it, and sometimes it's difficult. But over this time, I've been able to hone in on true crime or business case studies told in true crime.
Hmm.
But like you said, Suzanne, it is a high impact way of storytelling. So it's 20 minutes, roughly 20 to 23 minutes each, where you always learn something in the end, and some of the
Yes.
things that you hear will definitely shock you and irk you. But we also have subject matter experts or people that were close to the story that come and they talk about it. I don't know if you remember, but there was a company called Crazy Eddie back in the
Oh,
80s,
sure. Yes.
the electronics company. We wanted to switch it up a little bit, but that was actually a scandal. That this company was a family-run business that wanted to go out to commit crimes, and the first crimes that they committed were crimes against Uncle Sam. So they would skim money off the top and pay less in taxes, and then they would skim millions of dollars, and you know, um,
Yeah.
and then open up bank accounts offshore, and dump the money there. And then over time, they decided we wanted to scam bigger and go after investors, and then they went public and all of that. But the CFO, who was the mastermind behind it, contributed to the episode, and so it was great to hear him talk about.
Really?
Yeah, his name is Sam Antar. He's a whistleblower now, so he's doing good for society. But he had he paid his dues,
Hmm.
and now he talks about kind of the rise and fall and him masterminding this huge scandal, Crazy Eddie.
I really want our viewers and listeners to appreciate the amount of time and commitment that goes into 20 or 23 minutes, because it's not just 20 or 23 minutes. That's the end result. What would you say the average is between your research and studying and producing and editing and
I
posting?
I really appreciate you asking that question because 20 to 23 minutes does not seem long at all. But I do spend most of my week reading on case studies, speaking to people and interviewing them that are close to the story, speaking with reporters. And just so the time I spend, I probably read about 75 pages of content. So I just print them out one night and I spend, maybe 3, 4 days digesting that. I spend a couple of days reaching out to people that are close to the story. And it takes an average of maybe a week of of researching and writing. These scripts are 8, 9 pages long, and I just have to sit down and kind of crank them out. So it's
This
been
is a full-time job.
a full-time job that I do when the kids are sleeping.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I knew there was gonna be some time you poured in, but I had no idea that this, and we haven't even talked about the production of it. And I mean, are you doing every aspect? Are you outsourcing for the production part?
The production is something that I outsource. My husband
Mhm.
actually came from, he was, I don't know if he was a sound engineer. I mean, I think he made a bunch of music. He has a catalog of music. Um, and and so he first helped with the first 2 episodes, and then we realized it was a lot of work.
Yes.
And we both have full-time jobs, and so I found somebody, a sound engineer, so I outsourced that. But other than outsourcing it, the research, the recording, and everything is done internally and by me.
Well, that it's amazing, and you can hear the love and time that you're pouring into it. And I really want to encourage our viewers and listeners to check out the Great Fail podcast. Just put it in your Google search, and I think you're going to be real happy that you did. Where do you expect this to go? Just as we start to wrap up a little bit.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would love to continue building an audience. I think it's really important right now. One of the things that I tell people when I decided to launch this podcast was that I was invited to speak at a conference, and from there, talking about the launch of The Great Fail, I got the interest of two major networks, and they had approached me about potentially having The Great Fail on their networks. And through a series of conversations that lasted for weeks and months, I made the choice. And it's funny because my whole career, I've always been, looking at opportunities from a business standpoint. And this is
Right.
the first time where I'm looking at the opportunity from a creative standpoint. And it was a very difficult decision for me to decide to launch this on my own without the backing of anybody. And so, I think um, it's hard when you're starting out on your own without the backing of a major network. So my goal right now is to continue growing and having this grow organically. So, for your listeners, if you can support the show by listening and sharing with your friends and growing through, the grassroots approach, please do. And I think after that, I mean, I've been told that this would make for a great book. These vignettes of stories and lessons, um, and kind of an easier way to look at them instead of anything that's a real, college essay or a real case study, but just kind of like an interesting way of looking at these companies in layman terms. And also just, I think, probably, I've also been told that this would eventually make for a great television series. So who knows what the future will hold? But I think in the short run and the long run, my mission is to create the best stories that I can, and really do good, do my thorough research and make sure that I'm providing people with these tidbits of lessons, and if I can teach people a thing or two with every episode that we launch, then I'm doing my job and I'm doing what I sought out to do from the beginning.
Good for you. What character you have. I mean, I'm not sure that I could turn down a television deal. I mean, that really says a lot about who you are and your character and your dedication. How can people get a hold of you and find out more?
Sure. So you can go on thegreatfail.com, and you can also email me at Debra@thegreatfail.com. Please
Awesome.
check out the show.
You definitely should. Thank you so much, Deborah. We appreciate you being here, and I'm excited to follow your career because I think it's just going to blow through the ceiling.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you, Deborah. Thanks for watching the show. We hope that you enjoyed it. Having digital marketing for your product or organization is so crucial these days. People are ditching traditional advertising like print and broadcast commercials and turning to relationship marketing platforms like YouTube and podcasts that people can consume on demand on their time. Let's talk about how we can build your digital library with segments just like this.